Well, as you know, the situation in the Middle East continues to move forward or backward, depending on your perspective. Nevertheless, an interesting interview between Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel, present-day Defense Minister of Israel, and Mr. Charlie Rose, the PBS interviewer. Mr. Rose is famous for interviewing very high-level world leaders and asking very penetrating questions. An absolutely fascinating interview. Of course, let's make sure we understand where we are right now. We've come through a very important and critical time. Oh, by the way, those of you that are used to listening on our web feed, or watching the program, I should say, you're not going to be able to see the video part. You will be able to hear the audio feed, which you're doing right now. So anyway, if you can't get the video stream, do not be alarmed. It's not going to be available today. It will be back, God willing, tomorrow. Nevertheless, when we talk about what's going on in the Middle East right now, let's do a brief recap. Okay, this is the progression. The Barack Obama government attempted mightily to pressure Israel to stop all settlement building. I'm talking about in every area of the West Bank and also in East Jerusalem. Netanyahu, in an attempt to appease the Americans, agreed to a 10-month stop, and I think that agreement was November of 2009. Well, even though there was a 10-month stop, still, Barack Obama could not get Mahmoud Abbas to the negotiating table. Well, finally, the 10-month break, the cessation of building in the West Bank, was coming to an end in September. It was due to end September the 26th. On September the 2nd or 3rd, Abbas finally makes it to the peace table. Now, we've got to believe all of this was very carefully calculated. I'm sure that Abbas thought, you know, if I'll wait till the last minute to come to the table and then we'll show some signs of progress toward peace in the Middle East, then Netanyahu is going to be forced to extend the freeze on settlement building, or if he cannot do that because it would topple his government, since he has so many right-wing elements in his government, then we will be rid of Netanyahu. We will get someone easier to deal with. But if he refuses to extend the freeze, then that will put him in a bad light and show him as the obstacle to peace talks in the Middle East, and also will cause him to get a lot of negative feedback from Washington. So this became a very complex calculation. Nonetheless, that's what in fact did happen. Abbas came back to the peace table, and then when the 26th rolled around, there was a lot of pressure on Netanyahu to extend the freeze, but he said, look, I had a freeze for 10 months. You didn't bother to come till the last 2 weeks. I'm not extending the freeze. Furthermore, we've been having peace talks without a freeze since the year 2000 and since 1993. Why all of a sudden are you trying to change the rules? I can negotiate concerning those properties, whether we're building additional garages or whatever in the land or not. So anyway, that brought us to the point where Abbas said, look, I am not willing to negotiate with you while you're building on land that's supposed to be our land. You're building on occupied territories, even though where the borders are actually supposed to end up is supposed to be a subject of negotiation. Yet Abbas pounded away, and it looked like the Obama administration bought the Palestinian position that all territories would have to be withdrawn from. As a matter of fact, President Obama went on to say that negotiations should be resumed with the pre-1967 borders, except for agreed-on land swaps. So Mr. Netanyahu did not agree to that formulation. He opposed it publicly in the U.S. Congress and caused Mr. Obama to backtrack. So Netanyahu won that round, and now then the quartet is calling for negotiations to resume without precondition. Now, one more thing we got to note. Once Abbas said, I'm not going back to the peace table, then he made up his mind that he was going to the United Nations, and there he was going to ask the UN to unilaterally go over the top of both the U.S. government and the Israeli government and to recognize a Palestinian state along 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Now, this was a huge leap. Abbas thought perhaps he could pull it off because most of the United Nations would in fact vote in favor of such a thing. However, there was a big problem that he knew he had from the outset, and that was that the U.S. government has veto power at the UN Security Council, and the UN Security Council must approve all new applicants for membership in the United Nations. Then it goes to the UN General Assembly for final approval. Abbas knew he had the votes in the UN General Assembly because there's a very large anti-Israeli and pro-Palestinian bloc there, including 50 Arab nations that are always going to vote in lockstep with the Palestinians. So he knew he had the votes in the UN General Assembly, but he didn't think that, he thought that perhaps Obama could be pressured into not using the veto power against the Palestinians. And even if Obama did use the veto power, he felt like that the U.S. could be put in an isolated position, the U.S. and Israel against the world. Well, it hasn't worked out quite that way. Abbas did make application on September the 23rd. However, President Obama was able to put together a coalition of nations in the UN Security Council that refused to ratify. The Palestinians needed 9 votes. As far as the reports go, they were only able to get 8, and now then the Palestinians, the UN Security Council has not voted. As a matter of fact, the Palestinians did not ask them to go ahead and vote because they knew they did not have the necessary number of votes. So the U.S. did not have to stand alone. The U.S. did not have to use its veto power. Instead, the required majority for the acceptance of the Palestinians on the basis of 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as their capital was simply not there, did not have the votes to approve it. Now, that has thrown us into the situation where we are now. If that's not complex enough, another thing happened. The International Atomic Energy Agency switched leadership. Always before, Mr. Al-Baradei, who was an Arab from Egypt, he was the leader of the International Atomic Energy Agency for the United Nations. So he would go in and inspect the nuclear facilities of Iran, and you were always left wondering exactly what he saw or didn't see. However, Mr. Al-Baradei left office, and the new incumbent director is a man by the name of Yuklin Amino. And Mr. Amino decided he would level in his report, which was issued a week ago on Tuesday. When this report was issued, it came back that evidence was found that Iran was indeed developing a nuclear weapon, and that they had a program with the goal of developing a nuclear weapon. And some reports said they would have 5 nuclear weapons by April of this year. Well, all of this has caused the defense minister of Israel to be very much in the spotlight, and that's the reason for the Charlie Rose interview that occurred yesterday. And when I speak of yesterday, I'm speaking about the 16th of November. Now, I want to go over some of this because I want to make sure that you get the feel of where we are. Now, why is this so important? Because some people believe if Israel or the United States launches an attack against the nuclear capability of Iran, it will ignite a Middle East war that could end up becoming a world war. Furthermore, the Bible prophesies a Middle East war. It specifically prophesies that it will begin from the Euphrates River area, and that this war will in fact become a world war that will kill 1/3 of mankind. So this prophecy is in the Bible. It looks like it's time for the fulfillment of that prophecy right now, and all of this tension is building around the Euphrates River basin, Iraq, Iran, that area of the world right now. Okay, one more thing. The United States of America has said that Iran must not be allowed to acquire nuclear weapon capability. Israel says we absolutely will not allow it because that would make Iran an existential threat against us. We are a one-bomb state. Speaking of a nuclear weapon, one nuclear weapon in Israel, the nation of Israel is no more. Drop one nuclear weapon in Tel Aviv, and the fallout, the radiation is going to contaminate things so bad that the small nation of Israel becomes uninhabitable. So Israel is left in this unenviable position. Do we go ahead and attack now and risk a regional war, possibly a world war? Do we risk the condemnation of the world community? Or do we allow Iran to become a nuclear state? Once Iran is a nuclear state, what are the implications? Let's say that Iran decides to invade Bahrain. Let's say that Iran decides to invade Qatar. Who's going to stop Iran from doing that? After all, they now have nuclear weapons. It's like Korea. There are a lot of things we can't say to North Korea today because North Korea now has nuclear weapons. Well, that's the kind of power Iran would acquire if they, in fact, come into possession of nuclear weapons. Furthermore, Saudi Arabia and Egypt have both said if Iran goes nuclear, we go nuclear. We will not be in a position where we are dominated by a nuclear-equipped Iran. We cannot do that. So you can see all of these complexities setting in, and Israel suddenly finds itself at the mercy of one Ayatollah that would be willing to push that button and wipe Israel off the map, especially at a time when Iran is led by a president that seems to love to say that Israel will be wiped off the map. He continually issues the disclaimer, I didn't say I would do it. He just continually says Israel must be wiped off the map. Well, if you know someone is threatening that you should be wiped off the map, it's not a very comfortable position to be in, and you certainly don't want that person to have the ability to wipe you off of the map. So that's what we're facing right now. That's this over a scenario, and I want to give you some of the questions that Charlie Rose asked Ehud Barak, and how he answered them. Most interesting, we also will be taking your calls on the program today.